Some of the more interesting shows are the ones that go in a direction that you just didn't plan at all. So there's nothing canned about them. And so on tonight's show was an interview I did last night with Samuel. And we had only briefly discussed it beforehand. And the plan was to go over a couple of photos that he had taken on a flip phone, I think maybe 20 years ago. And in these photos, someone who was a friend of his and who was having trouble with some kind of a paranormal experience in his house, he had taken Samuel had taken a couple of photos at a birthday outing at a public restaurant. And what they didn't see at the time, but showed up later on on the photos, was there was some kind of image, I believe a face or something like that, behind the person Samuel was photographing. And so we were going to talk about that tonight. And we're trying to get those photos into a format that I can put on the laptop and put on this video. We have not been able to do that yet. So we were going to talk about that during the show, but the conversation went to another place. And Samuel's background is from Guyana, and he had a lot of interesting experiences as a kid. And there was one experience in particular that was really interesting that we had not planned on talking about, and becomes the main thing of tonight, of this show, was an experience of possession right in the middle of a classroom when he was 15 years old. One of the students that became possessed. So please check it out. I think it's a really good interview.
Not the X-Files, our X-Files. Welcome to our X-Files Vault. Regular people talking about unexplained phenomena. UFOs. Ghosts. Cryptids. Hidden archaeology. Weird science. Our stories. Our takes. Our X-Files Vault.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Beyond Reality 6, I believe. Hey, Samuel.
Hey, what's up, Kev?
Not much. Tonight I'm drinking long drink, which is like a gin and something and cranberry mix.
Can a little bit more.
What's that?
Hold up the can a little bit more.
There you go. Oh, yeah.
It's too short. No, too short to be called long.
Yeah, it's not like those old, when we were kids, they had those 16-ounce beers. We call them tall boys.
Yes.
I don't even know if they make them anymore or what they call them now.
I think, well, this is actually going to show age, but I think Bullet still does it.
Okay. All right, so let's try to get into something exciting here. I've known Samuel now for a couple months, and if you've seen him on other shows, you know he's a really bright guy, and he has an opinion on a pretty wide range of subjects. But one thing I didn't know until very, very recently is that he, years ago, was very deeply involved with paranormal investigations. He has the equipment, he's had experiences. So I know he has at least some interesting stories related to that. So let's try to dig in and get to the bottom of that. If you're okay with that, Samuel.
Oh, I'm absolutely fine with. Let's get into it.
I don't want you to have nightmares tonight, reliving any old horrible things or anything like that.
It's actually funny you said that, because once you do an investigation, or once you try to do a purging, you make enemy for life with different entities. So sometimes they do try to come back to haunt you.
I have so many human entities that have become enemies. I don't need any from the beyond.
Well, I know you're stepping into my realm right now, because I know everything that I know that everything you want, we have to get scientifically proven and reason and everything like that attached to it. Some kind of measurement, some kind of experiment associated with it.
Mhm.
When you step into the spiritual realm and the kind of things which I did before in terms of a spiritual warfare, there are some measurements, but there is not a lot.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
I'll that
Well,
right.
I know you have some equipment to show us too, and I'm looking forward to that. I want to, before we get to that, go a little bit back before to the beginning. Um,
Right.
but just I want to respond to what you just said too about that. I mean, yes, I do always kind of look at things more myself from a scientific perspective, and
Hmm.
which does not mean I don't completely respect somebody else's point of view on it. Now, see, to me, um, personal experience matters, but it unless it's shared, unless it's backed up by some kind of evidence, it tends to be somewhat weak, quite a bit weaker to me because there's so many different experiences out there, or unless it's something I've experienced myself, which I have to say, I don't really know if I've experienced anything that I would 100% or even 80% say this is supernatural, not enough to convince me, but I'm open to be convinced. And so I'm looking forward to hear about your experiences. So the first question I have though is, I think people would be curious as to what drove you to get involved. How did you come to get involved with paranormal investigations?
Well, when I was growing up, first and foremost, I was growing up in Guyana, South America,
Mhm.
and we actually there are, for a lack of a better term, there are a lot of haunted places over there. Like for example, I there was a school which I attended which was haunted. There was a school which my sister attended which was haunted. And we everybody inside of the entire village knew it. And almost everyone had a personal experience. I had personal experiences, my sister had personal experiences inside of her school. And it wasn't like you were trying to say that it wasn't real or anything like that. It was saying, okay, which one was not? So many parents were trying to send their kids to a school which was not. So it for lack of a better reasoning, many people, it was the norm. Many
So
people
if it
knew.
was the norm, why were people trying to avoid it? Didn't it just kind of become accepted? Like, oh, there's a
No,
ghost on the
it
bus.
was
All
it.
right,
When I say it was a norm, it was a norm that people knew that of the existence of these things.
Why did they fear it?
They feared because sometimes things can get attached.
Attached in a negative, harmful way.
Right. Attached to sometimes a negative entity can get attached to someone. And someone, I've seen it happen personally where an entity got attached to someone.
Okay, now what was the earliest or the most powerful experience that you had in that regard before you became a paranormal investigator? So that's something that maybe had a role in you becoming it.
When I was actually 15 years old, I was actually 15 years old and I saw someone who was in school, and it took 8 people to hold. This was a young girl,
Mhm.
and it took a lot of the teachers to hold her down, to try and sedate her and try and keep her calm. And she started speaking in Dutch. She
I'll
started.
need a few more of these to do that, but no,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm not trying to discount. Yeah.
No,
So,
but the funny thing is, she has no relatives, no relations, no association with anyone who is able to speak in that language.
Okay. So now, did you know this girl personally, or was she someone that just was in the school and was younger than you?
No, I know her.
You know her still.
Yeah, I still know her.
Oh, okay. All right.
Right now, she is fine. She's a mother. She has 2 kids. She has a husband. She's doing wonderful for herself, because she was able to be exorcised of what was trying to possess her.
Right. But I definitely want to focus on that first experience, not only what you witnessed, but how it might have changed, or if it changed you. Maybe it didn't change you. Maybe you already had that basic set of beliefs, but did
Well,
it shock you? Did it,
no, it
everything
will.
involved?
Anybody watching anything like that, it will shock you, because you will watch like a 12, a 13, a 15-year-old girl. As experiences grew, I got to see more. But you will see a child throw grown men away from them.
But let's focus on the first one though. So you said it was the teachers that were holding her down. So was she in school and she had an episode?
We were all in school. Yes,
Yeah.
we were in class at the time.
And all of a sudden, what happened?
All of a sudden, she got up and she started speaking to the teacher inside. She started speaking Dutch to him. And he was like, and he got scared.
Now, had there been any suspicions? Had she had any problems before this?
Absolutely none. She was one of the most quiet people inside of the class.
Okay.
This is one of the, you look at her, she's like basically 5'2".
So you were 15 and so you said she was younger, but how much younger? She was obviously in the same class as you. So
right. Just about
a year younger. So she's basically the same age as you. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you did know her a little better, at least from being in the same class, whether you knew her or not.
From the same class, you associate with your classmates, you sit down, you chat and stuff like that. You get to know them.
So one day out of the blue, without having any signs of problems, she stands up. Now, was she cursing at the teacher? Was she angry? Was she
before that
soup or anything?
No, before that, she sat down, she had her head down, and she was mumbling.
Okay.
And she started mumbling, and everybody turned around and looked like, come on, we're in class. Why are you mumbling like that? What do you say? And then she just looked up and her eyes just shot straight. But I don't know how to explain it, but those were not her eyes.
Okay. That's good.
Somebody, like, I'm looking at you, I know what you look like. So if I see your eyes turn brown,
right,
I know it's not yours. Now, if you're looking at an Indian person like me and you see my eyes turn blue, those are not my eyes.
Yeah.
So
she stands now. Does she stand up at that point? And
no, she was not standing up. She was holding onto the desk.
Right.
And the desk, based on the vibrations of her hands, started rattling.
So then what happened?
Then the teacher everybody got scared. Right away, everyone got scared. There were a few of us who actually went there to try and pry her hands from the desk. It was myself and like 4 other people.
Now, were you scared? I'm not trying to interrupt your story too many times, because I would, really would. This is obviously was a very interesting and transformational experience for you. So I will, as much as possible, would just like to bring you back to that moment and bring all the details out. So one of the things that the question comes to mind though here is that if I'm in the class and I'm 15 and that happens, I am not thinking possession. I'm thinking someone's having a seizure, someone's having a medical emergency of some sort. But I'm
Well,
saying that, but just let me add to that though. I'm not trying to say, to me now, if it was something beyond that, it's possible that it would make sense to me that if someone was having some kind of an extreme encounter like that, where they were being possessed and that power was emanating through them, that it seems to me likely that yes, people around them like you would sense that, and you would know that it's not a medical emergency, it's something else. But it's also possible that that could be informed by culture too, if you were raised to the so that's if that makes
well,
if that makes
well,
sense.
it actually does make sense to a certain degree, because in terms of culture, when you're raised to actually know of the existence of certain things, it actually becomes norm. So when you see it, you can actually recognize it. And it has been the norm when I was in school. I mean, it wasn't the first time that I saw something like that, but it was the first time that I got involved. So I saw something like that when I was much younger, but this was the first time I got involved because I saw that, and there was a part of me that said, "Head for the hills."
Yeah.
You know, you're scared to hell. You see somebody who's speaking in a different language, who you know, who you speak to on you're in the same classes every day. And all of a sudden they're speaking in a different language and they hold on, and the desk starts rattling.
Mhm.
And they're still talking. It's like they're chanting. You know,
Yeah.
my first, was I scared? Hell yes, I was scared.
Yeah.
And I tried to grab her. I called her by name. I said, look at me, it's me. What's going on? It did not make a difference. For somebody who is that tiny, and for me to wrap my arms around her, it did not make a difference because she just shrugged and I was pushed back.
Mhm.
So another friend came. So it came to the point where the students were trying to hold her back, and then the teacher who was there at the time, who was absolutely terrified of what was happening, just ran out. And I don't, it might have been at least maybe a minute, but there were other teachers who came in and tried to hold her.
Mhm.
And well, there were two things which happened. One is that when we tried to hold her down, the students ourselves, we were trying to talk to her, saying, "It's Sam, it's Sam. Look at me, it's me." And we're trying to. I'm holding her from behind. It's Sam, it's Sam. Stop, look at me. And she would shrug, and I would fly at least 5 feet away.
Mhm.
How that happened, I cannot explain. I'm just telling you right now.
Mhm.
And it happened to a few of us at the time. Most of these guys I'm still in contact with. We're still good friends,
Mhm.
but it's not like it was unheard of because this was the norm.
Mhm. So
There
when
are
did she
different
begin
schools
speaking Dutch? Like move forward with the story a little. When did she begin speaking Dutch
at that time,
at that
at
time?
date, at that exact time. Never before, never after.
And you mentioned that she stood up. So did she just kind of break free and stand up on her own, or?
Well, think about it, when you have somebody who is that tiny, and you have me, I'm not large by any means. I'm 5'7", And I'm trying to hold her and I'm trying to whisper in her ear, it's Sam, come on, talk to me. And you have another body who is my friend, who was my friend from high school, who is like 6'4", trying to hold her as well. And she just got up and threw everybody off.
Mhm.
I don't think a little person has the energy inside of her body to do all of that.
Okay. So did anything else happen in that incident?
Well,
How did the incident end?
we actually took care of it because of two reasons. Number one, she started going into convulsions. Right after she got up, she fell on the floor. She started going into convulsions, and nobody wanted to touch her. I'm just telling you, nobody wanted to touch her.
Yeah.
And I reached out to her and I held her and I said, all right. It was myself and two of the other guys who said, okay, we'll help. And we actually took her into the staff room. And that's where we had the second edition where the teachers were involved.
And so what happened afterwards? Did they bring her to a hospital, or did they call a priest, or how does that work?
We actually knew a few doctors in the area. So we called the doctors, and while the doctors were there, we actually called a couple of priests. Well, actually, the headmaster did, and he called the doctors, and he called a couple of priests. Her parents were there, and the parents were saying, "We don't need doctors. We need priests." So it was one of those cases where, to be honest with you, she was a kid at the time, and we all were, but she literally went through hell. For somebody to go through that, I saw her body move inside of some motions that are not natural.
So did eventually she have to be exorcised, or did she come out of it on her own?
That is something that I wasn't privy to.
Okay. When was the next time you saw her again? What was the period?
About 2 weeks later.
So was she relatively normal when she was back?
No, when she came back, she was normal. But almost like 90% of people stood away from her.
Okay.
But I remember when I saw her coming up, I remember walking up to her and giving her a hug, and she looked at me and she started crying.
Right. Because whatever she went through, it was definitely going to be traumatic,
Right.
Traumatic.
And I literally told her, I said, I'm happy to have you back.
Yeah, well, that's good. You were, even as a young, most of us boys at 15 are shits, but you were a pretty good guy at 15. So
no, but listen.
Will she be watching? Will she be watching this podcast, or
I'll send it to her.
What do you think she'll think of it?
I'm actually hoping. I sent her a message for her to respond to it. So I'm hoping she responds to it, and I actually asked her to be the one to confirm to it.
Okay.
So I know it's something that she wants to put behind her.
Yeah.
So whether she accepts or not, I mean, we'll see. Let's give the publication and let's see what she does.
Yeah. It's a challenge, because if I had gone through that and I came out of that as a person of faith, I would also maybe tend to think that explaining that experience of what you went through and how maybe it deepened my faith, I might look at that and say, this might help other people. If I'm just trying to, I'm not a person of faith myself. I was raised a Catholic, but that's how I might think if I had gone through that kind of experience. Now, I'm
Well,
curious too. Oh, go ahead. You could, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I want.
yeah, but there are two ways to look at it. Many people who go through these experiences, number one, is that they want to forget about it and move on with their lives. They learn that certain things are real, which makes them more spiritually aware. And the second thing is that they actually learn that never take anything for granted, you know, like never say, okay, I'm gonna send my kids to school, or I'm gonna do this or this or this. There is a spiritual war going on, and if you're not aware, things can happen.
Which
The,
actually goes to
this,
my next question on that, Samuel. And I don't mean to interrupt you, but I have a feeling this question sets up where you're just about to
right.
go anyways. Why do you think that Guyana is? Do you think that that particular area is like a front battlefield for this particular war? Is that why
Well,
all of this activity is going on? Or
well, when I was growing up, we had a lot of we had of this could be like 2 or 3 shows, if I can be honest with you, because I can actually get my dad to speak to you as well.
okay, that'd be awesome.
It was my dad is a Lutheran pastor. He has his degree and master's in theology. He's a Lutheran pastor, but he has seen a lot of things, and I have seen a lot of things while we were there.
Okay.
The only thing is that when you're inside of a particular location, and that location has been, I'll give you an example. When my dad was growing up, he was in a place called Fiverish, right? They were digging a well for water. And while they were digging the well, they were excavating human bones.
Is this in Guyana or somewhere else?
No, in Guyana.
I didn't know if your dad. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, he grew up there as well.
Yeah.
So they were excavating human bones. The place where he grew up, while they were studying, him and his brothers, there were 9 of them, 9 siblings. They were studying at night. All of a sudden, the plates from the shelves would just fly off. The cups would just fly to the ground, and they were there. This was a nightly occurrence.
But not until after the digging exposed, not until after the bones were disturbed.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
But the funny thing is that people at that time, and the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, up to the 80s, everybody knew about these things.
But that still doesn't, you're not really answering the question. You're answering why that particular location was bothered by those ghosts, but why Guyana? I mean, are more bones being disturbed in Guyana than in other parts of the world? Or
there are stories, but I don't know how true they are. Because of Guyana was first populated by the Dutch, right?
First colonized by the Dutch, but
right,
there was a native population there, right? Yeah,
right. Well, except for the indigenous.
Yes, right.
At the time when there were invasions, the Dutch had what they used to do is that they used to kill a couple of servants to protect their property.
Mm-hmm.
They used to bury their wealth and kill a few servants to protect it. Whether they believed that the spirits would protect it or not, I don't know. But whether those spirits came up to try to release themselves, who's
There,
to say?
you may
Which,
not be aware of this.
which
There is a
which
long
is
history of that in Europe.
which
Did you
is
know
why
that?
I don't know that.
There's a long history in Europe, from medieval times at least,
Mhm.
of every new building that was built, you put in bones to protect it. And there is, now that doesn't mean you necessarily, I'm sure most of the time you didn't kill someone, but there were rumors that yes, peasants, and some of the wealthier ones, peasants were killed in order to put their bones into the home. I mean, this was a tradition that lingered into the colonial era. So it's even been rumored, I believe, that houses in the United States or buildings that were in the United States that were built during the colonial era, some of them may have had that happen to it. I even need buildings. In fact, I will have to Google this. I wish I knew how you were going to bring this up, because I believe it was something that's been rumored to go on it.
Like we're just exploring this right now.
No, I didn't. It's anybody watching. I didn't have time to set up anything with Samuel, so we had no idea the conversation was going here. All I knew is he had worked as a paranormal investigator, and we were going to be talking about the little gadgets that he has there. But this is far more interesting. So the areas I believe I've seen these stories on in the United States are New York City, which was originally Dutch.
Right.
So that confirms
Well,
what you're saying.
actually, New York was actually New Amsterdam,
Yes. Yeah.
and one of the central locations in Guyana is today still called New Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Because it was first colonized by the Dutch.
Yeah. So you think maybe that the reason that Guyana might be a battleground, or at the front of a front battleground for this good versus evil stuff, is the level of evil that went on there might surpass the level that went on in other areas, or is it also possible that the faith there is stronger, so that attracts evil? Because
well, you and I had a conversation before about people putting faith in, or people putting energy into different things. Now, I cannot say yes or no that if you put so much energy in something that you can actually manifest it, but we both agreed that it was possible. Now, you put this idea for generations, and aside from that, we have this historical thing. Guyana was populated by the Dutch, the Spanish, the French, the English last. And with all of that war, with all of that bloodshed, conquest and conquering going on, in order to acquire the land to basically claim a flag.
Yeah.
For the nation at the time, there will be a lot of restless spirits. Like, for example, when was the last time you went to the 911 memorial?
Myself, I've never gone.
I've been there more than a few times, and I've always felt uncomfortable every time I've been there.
You're talking about in New York City, right?
Yes.
Yeah. No, I've never, believe it or not, I've never been to New York City except for getting off the highway once for gas and a cheeseburger at a Burger King. And that was before 9/11.
I was there at the I was there after it happened.
Yeah.
I was actually there when it happened. And I was there after it happened. And every time I went back there, I started to feel strange. And it was just, it wasn't just a feeling because I knew what happened there. Because if I say what I want to say, somebody will put me in asylum. Because sometimes you sit down and, like, for example, I'm sitting down in front of the church and I'm reading a book and I'm hearing people talking to me. Nobody's talking to me, but I'm hearing it. I'm not hearing voices on the street. There is a difference, you know, when somebody's talking to you.
Yeah.
I actually saw someone once. This one person who was visiting the memorial um, a few years ago, and I went up to them and I said, "Hi, how are you doing?" And we had a pleasant conversation. And then I literally told them, I said, "Your dad said he was proud of your achievement." And he looked at me and he's like, "Wait, what did you just say to me?" Well, in New York, I mean, you might get punched for telling somebody something like that. And I said, "I was told to give you the message that your dad is proud of your achievement."
Mhm.
Where I got that message from to tell this guy, I don't know.
Mhm. So now you're saying that in addition to these experiences in investigation, that you've experienced a certain psychic ability, or now is this something that you've cultivated at all? Have you
I
used that?
I I don't, for me personally, I don't think I have any psychic abilities.
Well, you did on that occasion,
Well, I think somebody was trying to give me a message.
right? But no one's ever given me a message. So I mean, and I don't mean that, and then please, I don't mean that to sound belittling at all, because what I mean is I don't have that ability, or maybe just someone didn't want to give me a message. I don't know, but
Maybe you were not in the right place at the right time.
maybe. So that's the only time it's happened to you, or
That was the only time when I actually told somebody something like that.
right? But you've heard other things though, and that was the time you had the courage to go through on it. But
I have heard a lot of things.
are you
Uh,
hearing anything right now?
yeah, you talking to me.
You'd be better off having ghosts in your head. So
Yeah, but no, but what I'm trying to say is, if you want, we can make a separate conversation for Guyana.
okay, no, all right, no, I think it's all right. So you're right. I think your suggestion we move forward a little bit. I think that's good. So this was all great stuff, though. I didn't know we were getting into really detailed stories like that. So this was the setup for you starting to work with a team. I'm not sure if you found that team, recruited them, or they recruited you, but you started working with a team. And also, I'd like you to talk about how that began, but also just to me, like when I think of paranormal investigators, I think of either people that are curious to discover something, or people that are just out to do something, fun that could be on film, or they're looking to belong to something. But in your case, you're coming from a totally different background where you really felt the seriousness of the stakes here, the consequences for people that are struggling with these things. That's not something that you were aware of before you even began doing paranormal investigations. So that's just I'm setting the stage. So what happened? How did you begin? How did you get going with that?
When I got to New York, back in the early 2000s, I reached out to a few groups, based on my experiences, which I had, and based on my youth, many of them basically shut it down
Mhm.
because they said I was too young. It's not possible that I knew these things that I said I knew. Um, but there was one group which actually said yes, but they were not interested in just doing only investigations. They were actually interested in doing cleansings and purifying places. So that was the reason why I joined them. Not only did we find places to purify and cleanse, and each person did things on their own as well. Like for example, we did a lot of the quote unquote typical experiments inside of graveyards
Mhm.
to use the EVPs. Um, well, I have one of those right here,
Okay.
so I can turn it on, and you can see that it's safe, right? We use many of those, and we use ghost boxes. We use different formats while we were there, and afterwards, each people branch out to do their own. We were all contacted differently. Like, for example, like what the episode was supposed to be about initially. Um, a friend of mine, a very, very close friend of mine, who I sent you the pictures,
Mhm.
which will be posted with the face blocked. Um, he is like my little brother, like a younger brother. Um, he has had several entities bothering him while we were in college.
Mhm.
I was looking at this guy one time and I looked at his eyes and I saw his eyes change almost reptilian. So what I did is I took off the cross from my neck and I held it in my hand and I held it in his hand and I said, "Look at me right now." He's like, and he turned his face. I said, and I called his name and I said, "Look at me." And when he turned to look at me, I said, "How do you feel?" He's like, "I feel very uncomfortable." I said, "Something's bothering you." But it's these are little signs and symbols that we use to do different things. That was one of the first signs that I knew that something was bothering him until I actually went to the house. It was in the middle of summer. They didn't have an AC running, and I walked into the house and I felt like I should be wearing a jacket because there was an actual change in temperature. I could see my breath in the air.
So if we could get a few more of these entities, we could solve climate change.
Well,
I'm just teasing, brother.
no, only if we can actually, like tie them together and just put them in the atmosphere. I'm pretty sure we can do something with that.
Or at least save on our air conditioning bill.
Yeah, well, I don't think you want them in your house.
I'm just kidding, man. But yeah, I'm sorry. Go on. So this person, we'll go back to the picture. That picture you sent me, the two pictures you sent me, what was that? It's only on my phone, so I couldn't see very well. I need to get a copy for my laptop. What was I looking at there?
Well, it looks like well, you could see as much as I do. From what I see, It looked like a disembodied figure, like a head looking at him or like coming out from him. And both of the pictures which I snapped, I didn't see it at the time.
Yeah.
You know,
Why did you take the pictures then?
huh?
Why did you take the pictures? Was there a reason that you just...
A birthday party while he
Okay.
was about to blow out his candles.
Okay, I got you.
I had a flip phone at the time. I said, all right, let me just take 2 pictures. And
Yeah.
I took pictures, and that's what came out.
Okay.
And the funny thing is that his girlfriend at the time had the same entity. Nobody else had the same thing. So I tried to say, all right, what about lighting and everything? And I said, all right, it couldn't be the lighting because we were inside of a place which was dimly lit, number
Mhm.
one, and it was pretty much blocked off. So the only light was from our phones. And at the time, you remember when we had flip phones?
Of course.
Right.
I remember when we had rotary phones and pay phones and all kinds of things. My grandmother actually had a party line. So when I was a kid, if we'd go over her house and you picked up her phone, you could hear some of her neighbors having a conversation on it. It's called a party line. It was a way to save money. You shared a line with other people. It was the cheapest line you could get. It was called a party line.
Now we're talking about way back.
Well, I'm not that old, but we're talking about the 70s, 1970s.
No, but what I'm talking about is like the late 90s, early 2000s.
I know the flip phones. I got
Yeah.
you.
So, which is why when you saw the pictures at first, you will know that the resolution is not great because I think I was using a Razor at the time. First generation Razor. The flip phone, which was really thin, everybody wanted one.
All right.
Right. That's what I took the pictures with.
Yeah.
And afterwards, it did not show up inside of the pictures initially, but the next day I looked at it, I said, I saw it and I didn't say anything, but his girlfriend called me and she said, did you notice anything funny about Steve's picture? I said, what do you mean? She's like, well, I took 2 pictures and this is what came up.
Do I have to edit out his name now that you just said it?
Yes, you might have to.
Sorry. All right. So I'm not going to say his name. Let's make up a different name for him. I don't know, Warren. So were there now? All right. So we know that there was let's assume there was some kind of a troubling picture let's assume that this is not a trick of the light, that there is something going on there.
Well,
were there signs beforehand of trouble with him? Is he having issues or? Okay.
Yes. There were a lot of troubles beforehand with him because this is somebody I've known for almost, like right now, current date, this is somebody I've known for almost 20 years. At the time, as I said, I still look at him up to today as my little brother. And there are things which are going on that whenever he has issues, he calls me.
Okay. So what kind of supernatural things or troubling things that might be supernatural was he experiencing?
Things moving inside of his house.
Okay. So that was going on before you took those pictures?
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about it. And up to the time when the experience which I went through, I had absolutely no idea about any of those.
Okay. But you had done paranormal investigating. So
prior to that, yes.
Right. And did he know that you had done that prior to that? Did he know that
Yeah,
about your past? But
but he
but he
didn't
didn't.
tell me.
But
He didn't tell me anything.
because it seems to me if you were close friends and he knew you had experienced that, he might bring it up with you. But
He didn't want to bring it up because of religious differences.
okay.
His family is strictly Hindu,
Oh, okay. All right.
right? So they believe in doing things differently.
Now, did that make I don't know enough about Hindu beliefs on those issues. Did that make it harder or easier for him to believe what was happening to him?
He wanted to, well, actually, to be honest with you, his girlfriend, now his wife, actually said was actually trying to convince him for me to help, um, because because of the fact that she had she according to her belief, um, it doesn't matter what you believe in, as long as you believe in God and you decide to go in there and do a cleansing, that it might actually be possible. Now, do you have to redo it after you did it the first time? Yeah, it might be possible that you might have to redo it. It depends on the entity that you are challenging.
Okay.
Now, one of the problems which a lot of people face, one of the problems which I face, is when you make an enemy with an entity, you make an enemy with an entity for life, which is one of the reasons why I retired from doing that. Um, I have I have to spend a lot more time um, concentrating on prayer and doing daily devotions to keep myself inside of a certain mindset. Whereas prior to that, I would just wake up in the morning, jump in the shower, and just, I didn't have to do daily devotions and stuff like that. Now I do.
To protect yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, because I have made so many spiritual enemies.
Mhm. Now, what about the one with Warren? Um, were you able to get rid of it for him?
I was, and it came back. And there's a reason it came back.
And is this one of the ones that is now also your enemy?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to ask this one, and you can stay on this story too, but I just want to, before I forget, ask one question. This is one of those questions. I hope it won't bug you. But when I watch shows on the paranormal or on any kind of unexplained thing, there's always those questions that come into my mind. I'm saying, why don't they ask this damn question? Well, I think maybe some people might be thinking this right now that are watching this. So after you found those pictures, after his girlfriend said, sent him and said, check this out. Um, did you take more pictures of him after that, or a lot more pictures, or ever any more
We,
pictures?
t-
Or
we took pictures of him afterwards, and there was always something wrong with the pictures.
I mean, because if it was me, I'd be taking pictures every day. I'd still be taking pictures up to now until I'd be
No,
driving
now,
because you're just getting more and more evidence,
yeah,
every time
yeah,
you catch something.
now he's fine. But at the time when we saw that, we took a few more pictures, but we never saved them. That's one of the things. We took a few more pictures because we saw something attached to him,
Okay.
and we started to go through different things. But then after we got into the actual house, we found out it was not only attached to him, it was coming from the house. So when we when well, actually, I said we, but in truth was, I tried to do a cleansing for the house the first two times, and after the first time I found out it wasn't any sort of residual energy. It wasn't any sort of just ghost energy trying to or poltergeist activity trying to just do these things. This was something demonic. The difference is when you find out something is demonic is when you start using prayers.
Okay. So when you say something is demonic, that's different than, say, for instance, when we were talking about Guyana and why you mentioned the story about the well with the disturbing of the bones. So those would be ghosts of human beings, but something that is demonic would not be a form of human being, right?
It would not be a form. It has nothing to do with humanity. It would have something to do with if you, well, for example, like your origins are Catholic, mine are Lutheran, but Lutheranism does not have an explanation for certain things.
Okay.
And Catholicism has a certain explanations for certain things. Now, it would say that when I say demonic, it would say that this is a creation of fallen angels created to torment humanity.
Okay.
So that is their entire creation. That is what they were created for. So there are some telltale signs for that, especially when you encounter a strong entity, like I did in this case. I walked into his house in the middle of summer, and they didn't have an AC on, and the house was frigid. When I say frigid, I could see my breath in the air.
So why do you think demons target certain people? Is it random? Is it people? Is it something they do, or?
It's not random. It is absolutely not random. Some people have weaker wills. Some people have actually weaker spirits. Some people have weaker defenses.
But they're not necessarily doing something wrong or sinful or lack of faith or.
Exactly. It's not anything like that. Some people are just weaker.
Because you have your 15-year-old, your 14-year-old friend when you were in Guyana in school. Why do you think she was the victim?
No, when it comes down to her, I think she was cursed.
Cursed? What does that mean?
I think there was an entity which was sent to attack her.
Because of her family, or?
Now we get into different.
And sent by who?
No, this is what I mean. Now we get into different cultures.
Yeah.
Inside of different cultures, people believe you can send different entities to attack a weaker member to torment them just because you had a disagreement or just because you want something that they have or that they want that you want.
Yeah.
So you throw enough things on their side.
Yeah, it's like voodoo or something like that. You're weaponizing the spirit world because of something that you want in the material world.
Part of weaponization as well.
Yeah.
So it can be done. I've seen it done.
So you think she was an innocent person that was
a
victim of something, an attack on her family?
She was an innocent victim who was basically an instrument to bring havoc
on her family or on the school, or okay,
for her family.
Yeah. So when people call in these spirits, or can you call a spirit, or can you call a spirit and a demon, or is it only demons that you can call in if you're trying to?
You can do either or. The difference is how far are you willing to go? Because you can call the spirit, but once you start calling demons, it actually requires sacrifices of blood.
Yeah, I'm not willing to go that far.
Yeah, that's one of the, like,
maybe a couple of drops. I don't know.
Yeah.
Patriots are playing Tampa Bay in a couple of weeks. And as much as I love Tom Brady, if it only costs me a couple of drops to get him to throw a couple of picks, I might be willing to do it. Well, but all kidding aside, so if you use this, can that ever come back? Can that spirit or demon ever come back against the person who?
Once you use it the first time, it's always attached to you.
So now you become a victim yourself.
Yes, you do. The only thing is, you have to get yourself cleansed of it.
Or can you just keep reusing it against all your enemies?
You can.
As long as you keep giving it blood or something.
But then you keep putting yourself further and further into damnation.
Yeah.
Now we're getting into the spiritual and the religious side of it.
Yeah, and you're getting into the afterlife.
But there is nothing like you do this for nothing. You have to give something in order to be able to get that. Everything has a price. Yes. And when you're dealing with making spiritual payments, you're paying part of your soul. Mm-hmm. And this is something that many people will probably have questions about, and there are many people who would actually disagree. Mm-hmm. Because like, for example, if you look at it from a scientific background, like what we said before in the past couple of shows, if you think about the soul as an entity, you think of it as energy. I think about it as information. Right. Like, for example, information processed and stuff like that. Now, there is a difference. There is a part of you which is, if you look at it from the perspective that I'm looking at it, now you're into my realm. How about that?
Do they have drinks over in your realm?
I got tea.
People watching this show are thinking that guy Kev is just like he was when he was younger, always drinking. Because every time I do the show with you, I'm having drinks. But the reality is I have like a few drinks a month now, if that. And it's been on these shows. I never drink. In all my life, I never drink by myself. I never see the point of that. But if you're drinking tea, I'm willing to have a drink. That's close enough for me.
Yeah, no problem, Kev. You're having something, I'm having something, we're having a good time. Yeah. Yeah, but the only problem is once you make an enemy with an entity, you make an enemy for life. And
Italians are like that too. And I love Italians. I'm just kidding. That's what I love about them. They got so much heart like that. But and you live in New York, so you know a lot of Italians. What's in that tea, buddy?
I'm sorry, man. You just caught me off guard with that statement.
We just lost our Italian audience, which is
maybe
if we have one. Yeah, exactly.
Oh goodness.
So
I did that. Um,
another question I have, again,
mhm.
this is along the lines of those questions that I feel like maybe this gives us an insight into Samuel too, or at least at a certain age. So having the, so I'm picturing, let's say, I think you said you were about 19 when you were doing these, when you first were doing these paranormal investigations with other people. Is
Yes.
that okay?
Um,
So,
the first experience was when I was in high school.
but I mean the actual investigation though, when you,
Yeah, I started at 19.
and that was when you were in New York at that point, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, but it was only about 4 years before that that you had that very transformational experience with your friend in school, and you had also encountered things perhaps even before that when you were younger, because you were in a hotbed area of activity, and it was a common part of the culture to believe in ghosts and demons and weaponizing spirits to do family bidding and stuff like that. So I'm a little surprised that you would kind of have an interest in going into cemeteries with EVPs, because that seems so far beneath what you had already experienced. Like
No,
someone that would be curious of evidence
well,
of the afterlife would be
well,
interested in that, but you didn't need that. So
I didn't need it, but at the time with the people who I was with, for a lack of a better term, in terms of knowing about this stuff, I would consider them juniors. They
that makes
older.
sense. That makes sense.
They were older than me by
They hadn't
far,
experienced what you had though.
but nobody believed the kind of experiences I had. So when I was walking through the cemetery, when I would feel something or something like that, and I would be like, all right, something's over here, turn it on, let's record something. They'll be like, yeah, but we were supposed to go over there. I'm like, just turn this shit on right now. And they would turn it on and they would get some kind of activity. They'll be like, how do you know? I'm like, because you can tell a difference. You can literally feel a difference. They'll be like, yeah, but I felt something, but I didn't think. Well, you felt something, but you didn't recognize what it was.
Yeah.
Which is what most people go through today. Sometimes you walk through something, you feel something, but you don't recognize what it is or what it's alerting you to. Um, in terms of my early experiences, I actually stepped away from doing those paranormal investigations with my first group. I would say I can't tell you exactly right now, but it was about 6 or 7 months after I started working with them.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you the reason. They didn't know what the hell they were doing.
Right.
That was the first group I was actually with. And I was trying to say, all right, when you find this, why don't you look for this? Or if you want to get communication, let's do this. But they had their own different ideas that they were not willing to listen to suggestions. So I left.
Would it be possible to describe the situation this way? They were looking for evidence that the paranormal is real. You were looking for ways to combat evil spirits or help people solve problems related to the paranormal.
I'm always looking for ways to combat.
But they were looking for evidence. You already had experienced it. They hadn't. So they just wanted some kind of evidence that there's something there.
Yes and no. I would say yes because I know what I know.
Yeah.
No, because when I was showing them of evidence of certain things, they would basically say, well, okay, well, maybe we can find better ones, and just basically drop it to the side because I was the youngest member on the team.
Yeah.
So nobody actually took my experience, knowing at the time. I heard from one of them up to a few months ago, and now he's saying that maybe they should have taken my experience and what I knew at the time into account, because I knew much more than they experienced. Because
Mhm.
of the five of us, three of them have never experienced anything in their life, and they were looking for an experience to do something. One time I remember, they actually pulled out a Ouija board, and I said, "That's it. Good night. I'm leaving all of you."
Have you ever used one?
No. Will I ever use one? No. It is A Ouija board is actually opening a pathway into a demonic realm, because each board is actually controlled by a lesser demon.
Can you? All right. So I can understand the risk of using something like that to open up a doorway to something that's
Mhm.
trying to get in. But can you also use it to contact spirits of deceased relatives or loved ones? Is that
You can use it to contact, you can use it. Here's the funny thing, because it is ruled, each board is, many people look at it as a game and stuff like that, or something silly, but in when this thing was first created, it was not created for the purpose that we're using it for right now. um, it's not a game. First and foremost, it's not a game.
but
It's
can you
not,
contact your lost loved ones?
no,
There's no chance of it.
because who you will be contacting is not your lost loved one. You will be contacting something who will be posing itself as
No.
your loved one.
So you can't contact spirits, you contact demons or something demonic.
You will contact, as I said before, something. I don't know if it's a spirit, I don't know if it's a demon, it could be either or.
I mean, you can't, by a spirit, I mean a former person, a deceased person, the ghost of a person. Can you contact somebody that has?
You can, if there is an entity nearby, maybe a spirit of somebody who is restless, who is nearby, who is within the realm of to be contacted.
Okay.
You open that doorway and they are nearby, they will move into it.
So you could only contact one of your deceased loved ones if they were lingering nearby for some reason, like say they were
Right.
too troubled, and as you see in the movies, they don't move on, because they're
Right.
troubled for some reason.
But
So
the other thing is, I would never, like, one of the things that I tell everybody, like, the less I have burnt, personally, I have burnt 19, 20, 20. I have burned 23 Ouija boards personally.
you have what? And
Burnt,
burnt them. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I have burned them. I have taken them away from inside of the house. I threw holy oil on them. I threw holy water on them, and I lit them on fire.
I just had a great idea.
What?
I am going to tonight take an envelope and write a word on a piece of paper and put it inside that envelope seal it up, and write Samuel on it. And I'm not going to tell you what's inside that envelope.
I'm not
And
going to the Ouija board to find out.
no, no, no. I'm not suggesting that, but I'm going to give it then to somebody in my family. And what I'm going to do is, I mean, as you know, I do have a terminal disease. So at some point in the next, whatever foreseeable future, I might be able to whisper that word in your ear.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you can contact, I'll leave you a way to contact. And if that word is the same thing that's written down, that's evidence.
Well, it's part of the scientific process. Theory.
Not that you require the evidence, because I know you believe, but that would be still.
Well, you're looking for evidence. I
won't be then.
Well, for example, I can tell you of evidence. Like, for example, one thing which we spoke about in terms of spirituality is, I think I told you about my dad.
Mm-hmm. Well, what about him?
He had a bone growing out of his knee.
Oh, I didn't know that was your dad. You told me. Okay. Yeah.
Right. He had a bone growing out of his knee where he was not able to kneel, and he was in seminary at the time.
Mm.
And when every other person who was in seminary would kneel, he couldn't, because all he had to do was stand. And then one time, I remember he told me personally, he said he had an argument with God. He said, am I going to be the only pastor who cannot kneel before your altar? And then the next day, it was gone. This is something which has X-ray evidence and everything like that. And it shows a 3-inch spur coming out of your knee cannot just disappear overnight. Mm-hmm. That's all I'm saying.
Your dad had a bone to pick with God.
Well, the bone was in his.
Yeah. All right. So we've been at it now we probably have about 5 minutes left before we stretch the boundaries of memory.
Yeah.
But I think it's been a good show. So, but is there something else that you'd want to add related to this conversation?
Yes, I do. Anybody who wants to get into the realm of paranormal investigation, you have to be willing to make yourself an enemy, because you will be challenged. And I don't mean just challenged by people. Anybody who gets into doing these things, you have to be able to have some sort of faith.
Well, and I think what you've added that's new to the conversation from anyone else that I've heard on this subject, I think everybody understands that if you believe in that if you're going to take on entities, that that just like any battle, there is some risk involved. But what you're saying that I had never heard before is that not only are you taking on that risk in that moment of battle, but that you have to be prepared to now change your life or make a permanent adjustment in your life, because these things are going to be after you now from here on till the end.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying, because you will make an enemy. And personally, I have made many enemies, which is why that's one of the reasons why I stopped doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it is not a good thing to do to try and help people.
Right.
It is an absolutely selfless thing to do, to try and help somebody who is in need. It is a great thing to do, but you have to be willing to make that choice to be able to deal with that enemy afterwards. You have to be spiritually strong. You have to be spiritually content in your world, because when you show weakness, they will they will explore that weakness and drive it into you. Has it happened to me? Yes, it has. I have
Um,
had moments of weakness when things have happened to me.
Speaking of moments of weakness, and related to the same questions, so I can't. What's the actor that played Dr. Lecter in Silence of the Lambs? I can't. What's his name? The English actor there. What is it?
Hannibal Lecter, or are you
Yeah,
talking?
what's the name of the actor that played Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs?
Oh,
Um,
Anthony Hopkins.
Anthony Hopkins. Yes, he was in a movie about possession. I don't know, maybe 5, 10 years, probably 10 years ago. Have you seen that movie? He plays it.
With him and the younger priest.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
where they saw the donkey and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it was so. What makes me think of it so is more than just your life or your well-being or your aggravation at risk. When you have these entities as enemies now, are you at risk to temptation? Is your soul at risk? Is there a greater danger that you could, because that's, I believe, what happened to that priest in that movie, is that he starts falling.
inside of that movie, his soul was at risk because of the amount of in because of the amount of enemies he has acquired over his lifetime.
So is
And
that what you're saying? That's what you're saying,
yeah,
right?
uh, if you look at it, it started to get to him, which is why he started losing himself,
Mhm.
until he caught himself afterwards. But when he started losing himself, the entities, when they were attacking him, they started to take control of him, which could happen to anyone. And honestly, I would be comfortable in assisting anyone to combat an evil spirit, but I am not willing to do that by myself again,
Right.
because I've had several experiences which I will not speak about,
Okay.
but that have happened to me, and I managed to pull myself out of them. And I don't want to do that again.
Okay. Well, thank you, Samuel. I think that was a great show. I never knew any of those things about you, and hopefully some of those, both the young woman at the time and that you're still in touch with when you were in school, and perhaps who we're calling Warren, if any, or anybody else, if they'd like to.
Remember the blurring of the first one.
Yes, right. If anybody would like to come on to the show and talk about their experiences with you, that would be fantastic. I'm going to stop the recording and say goodnight to everybody. Join the conversation on Discord, please.